It's time for Getting Down to Business with Mark Mondo. This new show discusses trends, technology, and tactics to help the listener learn more about improving sales, saving money, and fulfilling a personal mission through entrepreneurship. Today, we'll interview Nils Welham, the owner of The Uncaged Existence, about how he coaches people to help them start up new businesses after leaving the corporate world.
Welcome to Getting Down to Business with Mark Mondo on WVLP 103.1 FM. I'm your host, Mark Mondo. We're on the air in Valparaiso, Indiana, and you can listen to us streaming on the website at wvlp.org or use the TuneIn app on your mobile device and look for WVLP. 103.1 FM WVLP is a local nonprofit radio station based in Valparaiso, Indiana. This show, like many others on WVLP, are made possible by the generosity of donors and underwriters. We accept donations at WVLP.org. Simply click on the support tab and make a one-time donation or sustained pledge to WVLP. All donations are tax deductible. Underwriters are made up of businesses and organizations that support the shows on WVLP. Getting Down to Business with Mark Mondo would like to thank Homes by Hortensia, a Coldwell Banker affiliate in Porter County, Indiana, for their support. Homes by Hortensia has served the region's residential real estate needs in Indiana for over 12 years. Contact Hortensia Moreno at 219-249-5118 or visit homesbyhortensia.com. Homes by Hortensia, habla español. Welcome to the show. In case you're a new listener here, here's my backstory. I've been a consultant for small businesses for the last 25 years, helping small businesses implement customer relationship management software, otherwise known as the CRM system, where I learn their business processes and customize software to help them gain an advantage in sales, marketing, or customer service. But there is much more to becoming a success in business than just having a good CRM system. That's why I bring on guests to tell their stories and share tips on either technology, tactics, or trends they use to become successful. So let's get into it and introduce everyone here today. To my side is the producer. She's the star soprano, and she's my wife. It's Mrs. Cynthia Zimmerman.
Hello, hello.
And let's introduce our guest, Nils Welham. He's an explorer, a listener, someone who really doesn't judge. He likes a challenge while remaining cheeky. He's lived in 4 different countries, visited 46 different countries and counting. And for the last year, he's traveled in a camper while scaling his coaching business. His mission is to get people to be themselves and achieve more freedom and joy. He loves it when people have that little spark in their eyes when they talk about an idea or vision for the future. And this is what lights him up. Welcome, Nils.
Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. So, hey, I'll start off here. Most businesses start up because a person has a fairly unique technical skill. And if they get hired directly, instead of working as an employee, they can keep 100% of the revenue. And that sounds great. And that played a big part of my origin story when starting my consultancy in 1997. I got really lucky. A friend loaned me money to get certified in a CRM program called ACT. The ACT brand did all the marketing by having my name in every box that went out the door. And I just had to learn tech skills and answer the phone first. Wow, I missed that element of my business where the marketing was done for me. It also took care of the company vision while I was able to focus on technical knowledge and building up internal systems to make me more efficient for delivering tech support. So what happens if you don't have that luxury? Or you want to get out of the corporate world? You need vision and systems to make this happen. Another thing was I was also taught to make this happen on my own without asking for help. After all, showing vulnerability outside of tech support knowledge wasn't exactly a skill that was taught to me in business school or the corporate world. So I don't want my listeners to make the same mistakes I did, no matter where they are in the startup phase. Or maybe your current business is stuck in a midlife crisis and they need help redefining the vision and the systems. And that's where I believe Nils can help the audience out. So welcome, here you are.
Amazing. Yeah.
So how did this all start? Because you were busy, as we talked in our pre-production meeting. I thought you were going to play football for a Dutch club called, it's written in American English, AJAX. We would say Ajax, but it's called Ajax. So
Yeah. I mean,
how did you wind up starting?
first of all, I wish that was a boy's dream. But it's, I guess, I started, like, I would say a lot of the people growing up for me was kind of fairly simple. I was kind of expected, you go to college or university, you get good grades, you go get a good corporate job, and you climb the ladder, right? And that's what I did, basically. I went into financial services, and I became initially a financial analyst, which was okay. I got quite, let's say, bored quite
Well, you
quickly.
could say that.
And then, yeah, I mean, I think it was, I mean, it was interesting at first, but after a while, it's like, okay, done that, been there, done that kind of thing. And then I got the opportunity to basically go into London. So I moved from Belgium to London. I went into consultancy for the same firm. And again, initially I would really be lying if I said it wasn't fun at first, because imagine 26-year-old at the time going to a big city as London, and having the opportunity to travel all over the world. So it wasn't necessarily a bad gig, but what I would say is that over time, it really dawned on me that it wasn't for me. I know people talk about Monday blues. I think for me it was kind of everyday blues. I was like, oh my God, wow, why am I here? Right? Why am I was wasting my life, right? Because I wasn't happy. It wasn't necessarily lighting me up. There were aspects that I did enjoy, right? But most of the time it's just like it was a bore. And
You feel
so
like, tell me more about the
mm,
boredom, because you might have been it sounds like if you're a financial analyst and they're throwing you all over the world, was the financial
mm.
security there?
Oh yeah, it was definitely there, and I think that was one of the difficult parts, right? Because for all intents purposes, if you look at, I would say, well, society or even my own definition or belief around success was, like I said, go to uni, get a good job, and make good money, essentially, right? And I had all of that in principle, so the financial security was definitely there, but at the same time, it was also a blocker in, I guess, my future journey, right? Because the boredom is really around. I wasn't able to do what I really enjoyed. I did have my own team, and that's kind of, I guess, where I started to realize what I did enjoy, which is developing people, helping people out. I mean, I remember even talking to some of my team members at the time, where I was essentially helping them kind of fleshing out their own business ideas. I was like, oh, this is awesome. That's what really lights me up. And so I guess there was a few kind of personal things that basically made me take responsibility, because I could have gone down that route and been have an okay life. But for me, it was just soul sucking empty, essentially. So I made a change, and I kind of did the work. I realized what I liked, what I wanted to kind of help people with. And then I started transitioning, which is a story in itself in terms of how that happened, basically.
Well, that's why we're here. And I think what we love to hear, you said, when you're talking about the 46 countries, by the way, we're going to reference one
Mm.
of our friends. I think I sent you the link in the pre-production notes. One of our other coaches we interviewed, Travel Bug Annie. She's been able to become a coach, and
Mm.
I think she's hit all seven. She's actually hit all seven continents. So you got to catch up with Annie.
Yeah, definitely. I haven't done all seven continents. That's cool. I'll need to have a chat with her.
So, well, tell us about that journey. I mean, share as much or as little as you like, because I think it
Mm.
sounds like you were fiscally happy.
Mm.
Money was satisfied. That Maslow hierarchy of needs. You got your money, you got your food, you got your shelter. Sounds like you go for a great pint down in the city of London on the weekend.
Yeah.
So what was?
Yeah.
But you got bored. So let's talk about that. Let's unravel that.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, when I think about a life, And I have lost, for example, I lost my mum when I was younger, and for me that really put a certain perspective into life as well. As in, life is short. You kind of don't know what can happen, and so for me that was it. I didn't like the fact that I was waking up every day and was like, you know how sometimes like people are just complaining, oh yeah, I need to go do my job, the whole 9 to 5, and then the weekend is finally I can do some stuff that I enjoy. Like you said, maybe have a few pints in the city. And in my head at least, that's pretty, it's kind of sad, right? Because we have 7 days a week, 52 weeks, 24 hours a day kind of thing. And the majority of that was being unhappy. And so there came a point where, again, a combination with, personal kind of struggles, that cost, because the benefit I had was financial security, right? A life that, people would enjoy necessarily, or society would consider success. So there were benefits, but the cost on me as a person just became too high. And so there came a point in my journey where I was like, okay, Nils, either there's two options, right?
Yep.
Either you stop complaining and just get on with it and accept it for what it is, because it's not necessarily bad, or you do something about it. And I think that's interesting there, because I personally believe as well is that there's always a cost to pay, right? A price to pay for change, whether that be in financial investments, whether that be time, whether that be looking at your own fears. And I was willing to pay that cost for the change that I wanted. So it was time. It was really time. And there's a few, I would say, interesting things that happened, because when I was doing the work in terms of, okay, what do I really want? What are my values? What am I good at? Because, I mean, let's be honest, right? We still need some sort of financial means to, I would say, survive and live a comfortable life. And I had a very interesting, I asked myself two questions, which were really, for me at least, powerful. What would I do if money wasn't an issue? And I had written down coach initially and woodworker. And I mean, again, I would be lying if I knew what it meant with coach, because in my head, Mark and Cynthia, we've talked about it. I like my sports. So in my head, it was more around sports coach, kind of, that kind of dream, maybe a different facet of becoming a football player, but at least in that kind of area. And woodworking is, I don't know, I just really like the feel and the touch of wood. I would say that latter thing has kind of transpired in when I converted my camper van, which is essentially built out of wood. So I've kind of scratched that itch a bit, at least at a base level. But the coaching was really interesting, because I had no idea exactly what that would look like. But what had happened, and then I don't know if you believe in synchronicities or maybe luck or chance, whatever you want to call it, really.
I call it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I call
it. Go for it.
I apologize, but it's something that I want to get off the chest, because it's been a really awesome phrase I learned in 2004. And I think we talked about this in our initial meeting before you met Cynthia. In 2004, in my past life, I'll call it, before Cynthia, I went to a conference about tiny house architecture in rural Wisconsin. And there was an author that had this book called How to Survive Without a Salary. And his goal was to give out the book, and then you would obviously read the book and get kind of some basics. One of the things he said to do was to cultivate coincidence, so you can get good deals on whatever you buy. You don't buy retail for everything. You cultivate coincidence. So when you're ready to buy your own block of land and build your own house, just using I'll call it off the shelf materials. You're not buying drywall and whatnot, but you kind of build this kind of, I think it was like a stone cabin, I'll call it a stone cabin. And you learn how to go literally old school. You start over. You kind of start, and you're on your own land, and you have no mortgage. So,
Beautiful.
I call it cultivating coincidence. Yeah.
I love that cultivating coincidence, and I think I like the active word of cultivate it, because I think there is an element of getting these coincidences when you put yourself in that situation. So I really like that. Thank you for sharing, Mark. And so yeah, that coincidence in my case was, I had an old friend of mine. So I mean, he lives in Denmark and was exchange. Did my exchange in Denmark when I was a student, and he was interviewing this coach. I mean, Mark and Cynthia, I mean, I can't remember his name. The only thing I can remember is how I felt. Like my entire body was almost like, it was almost vibrating. So I had this super like big sense of possibility and opportunity because of how that man was talking, what he was talking about. And it kind of all linked back to that big question and those answers of, I'd be a coach. And that's when I would say, really accelerated, because I went down a little rabbit hole. I was like, oh, okay, who's this guy? Where did he study? How did he become a coach? And I found the initial training that I then followed, which is, it's actually a US based coaching kind of, I don't know, academy, maybe.
For sports or for a business coach?
No, for general coaching. And so you can do general coaching, like the basics. And it's about a year and a half. And then you can start, I guess, niching down in transitions or performance or leadership or relationships. And so everything in my body, in my mind is saying, well, I'm going to just do this. And so I did. And so I started that journey. That was back in November 2020. And so, and I would say I have looked back, because I remember there was a moment, especially after the first weekend, I was like, oh, amazing, learning all these new tools, like connecting with like-minded people. But then there was the duality between, hey, but Nils, you are this finance guy, like, who are you to transition? Like, who are you to completely go into on a different path, right? Why are you basically going in the opposite direction of what I believed was success? And so there was doubt in that journey, but luckily, I guess there was moments where I got some guidance, and it allowed me to kind of stay the course. And then the rest is kind of, I mean, I would say history. Like in March 2021, I incorporated, started building my business. I went part-time as well in corporate because, I was still living in London, and London is a very fun but expensive city.
Oh, yes.
It is. Yeah. And I did that for a year. And then I call it my Freedom Day. It was the 31st of December, 2021. That's when I took the official leap and went full-time.
Well, that's
And that was right around, COVID time. So how did that affect things?
Yeah. To be honest, I mean, in terms of the decision, I mean, I think COVID did also, I think for a lot of people, allow people to slow down, right, to a certain extent. Although from our perspective, because most of our stuff was able to do on the computer, so I was still working full time, like proper hours, let's say, which was a blessing in a way, because I still got my salary, but also I was slightly jealous of people that were on furlough and had all that time. But I would say that it allowed me to slow down a little bit more, and allowed me to really take the time to assess and to sit with things that would be coming up. But from a business perspective, I think it was beneficial in a way, right? Because same reflections I did, I think many people did, right? Because all of a sudden, life was upside down.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, like, is this really what I want? So that helped.
That's a great moment, because I think on a personal level, if I wanted to change my mind on, well, maybe I should do X, Y, or Z for a career. And then how do you feel about it? Like, well, maybe you can make big money doing, let's say you could do really big money selling commercial buildings. But how do you feel when you get it? Do you feel like, wow, holy cow? Or is it like, ooh, I don't know. So I think that it's fun to, talk about either with the people you've worked with so far or in general, at least your experience about that moment. Do you think, what is that? How important is that moment for you?
The moment, so just to make sure I got this, when you say aha moment, it's when people sort of realize, this is what I actually want to do.
Right. Like when you met your coach, that
Yeah.
coach in Denmark.
Yeah.
Talk about that if you can.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's an interesting one, because for me, that aha moment, again, you talked about cultivated coincidences, right? Because I did some of the work, I looked at my values, and then that came up. And I guess the best way for me to describe it is, it's not necessarily my mind, because I think we have a lot of like inner chatter that is irrelevant, and it just felt right. So it's like, it was like that all of my senses, my entire body, my entire being was saying, like, Nils, like, this is it. Like, literally, this is it. And so it's really difficult to describe, because it's like
Actually,
I kind of just said, it's as if
you
everything
described
said
it.
yes.
You got it good. You did well, because I think to talk to the audience, if you're doing it just for the money, you may wind up like Nils. You may be successful but empty.
Yeah.
Or do you want to take a path that says, you know what, I feel better when this is done, and maybe I'll interrogate Cynthia a little bit. You pursued a career in music for many years. Why? It wasn't because you had a recording contract with Atlantic Records, like, Spears or a Taylor Swift contract. I mean,
Yeah, I'm not that kind of singer.
that's right. No auto tune here. No auto tune. But in any event, you didn't have that recording contract first to drive it. Let's talk about like that moment where you were like, this is what I want to do.
Well, I was in college and I didn't have the guts to follow. Actually, I started out as a musical theater major, and I just didn't have, I was too scared to pursue that, honestly. So I took a safe route and started studying speech pathology to become a speech therapist. And I got an undergraduate degree in that. And the minute I graduated from that, I was in tears because I knew exactly that was not what I wanted to do. And I just finished up my undergrad with a degree that I was never going to pursue. Now, a sidebar on that is that I did get to learn a lot about the voice on the scientific level and your articulators and everything. And that's helpful, I think, in any field. But after that, I did some soul searching and eventually started working full time and going to school part time at American University in DC. And that's where I got my other undergraduate degree. This time I did really follow my passion, and that was voice performance and classical music. And then that led me to Illinois Northwestern for my graduate degree. It was hard, it was not easy. Financially, it was very taxing. But I knew I was doing what I was meant to be. And I was very happy, even if it was a hard road. I was very happy. And it's one thing to be happy knowing you're on the right path. You can deal with the struggles and the challenges because the rewards are so sweet. But if you go with something that's safe and you're helping other people, say maybe if I had become a professional speech pathologist, I would have been bored and frustrated for sure, because I knew in my heart of hearts I'm not doing what I really want to do. So, I feel more and more people need to ask that question, because so many people, either their circumstances, they don't allow them to do what they wish they could do financially. And that would be a question I would be like to ask you, is that some people, they're the breadwinner for their home, yet they know they're not in the career that they want to be. But they feel like if they make a change or follow their passion, not only financially are they going to be putting themselves at risk, but their family at risk. So how do you help someone that's in that situation? For me, I was just always on my own. I didn't have a family to raise or anybody else to support but myself.
I
That's a
love
pretty
that
good
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think maybe first I just really want to just empathize something that you just said, because I think it's really, really cool. You mentioned, right, I knew in my heart it wasn't what I wanted to do, but yet you followed the mind or the fears, and I think that is really important, because I genuinely believe deep down, when we quieten down, everyone, and I mean everyone, knows what they really want to do, but we just don't always give in because we're listening to fears or whatnot. I mean, even for me, when I put my resignation in, it was mid COVID, and my dad was, it's different generations, more about financial security, and he was like, "Nils, what are you doing?" Like sending me unemployment rates through and stuff. I'd already resigned by then, so but so I think it's really important that to highlight that. To come back to your question though, Cynthia, it's a really good point. And when I work with people, and I did this for myself as well, although I might have done it slightly different, if I would do it again, a bit less gung-ho, is get really clear on what your financial situation is. Right? Because when you're creating something new, I mean, the people I typically work with are business owners, right? So, there's an element of selling your product or your service. One of the worst thing you can do is, having to look over your shoulder every single minute, because, if you don't get this deal, you can't put food on the table. And so I really slow that down. And there's an element of radical honesty, right? Is, okay, what is it that you have? What can you also survive on, right? In a sense that, what are non-negotiables for you? And I mean, imagine if you have, if you have a family, of course, one of, first of all, the non-negotiable is to provide for them. Well, okay, so what are the basic provisions that you need? And then step approach, right? Because, hopefully, most people live till quite a nice, long, and I guess high age. If you're really creating a life of your kind of dreams and creating a business that you really want to have, like an aligned life, it's a long-term game. So be willing to step that kind of journey of mastery. I had the same with a good client of mine, actually. So they went from almost not knowing how to feed their pets to now being fully reliant on their business as revenue. And in between, there was taking a job that didn't suit them, then slowly reducing the hours and upping the business. And I think that's really important, is just to look at the facts and look at, okay, this is what will work. And to look at, I would say also, there's no shame in doing it slow.
Yeah, I think most
there's a
people,
lot of shame.
I totally agree with that in the long game, because I think especially younger people think, well, if they can't succeed in a year or 2 years or 3 years, then they failed and they have to go back to a regular 9-to-5 job. And there's no shame having a side job until your business really gets off the ground. And I think that some people need to understand that, do what you need to do to fulfill your dream. And if that means working part-time at Target while you're, developing your new business or passion, then that's what you do. And for me, even when I was performing full-time, I still had a desk job to pay the bills. And but I always had jobs that were flexible and I could take time off and, go for auditions, things like that. But yeah, there's no shame in that. I mean, it's not going to all happen in a year.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I mean, so I did about like a year part-time whilst I was building it, and then from Freedom Day onwards, it still took me about a year and a half to have consistent, livable, like, salary. So, and I'm super happy to share this, because I think it's important to be realistic about these things as well. Can it go faster? Yeah, sure, it could. I mean, and I know people have done it faster, but there's also people that have taken longer.
And I think
And
if you
again,
have
like you
that,
said, that's okay.
yeah, and I think if you come in with that understanding, you have a good foundation for success.
Yeah, yeah.
Before we get into the next segment, we wanted to let you know you're listening to Getting Down to Business with Mark Mondo on WVLP 103.1 FM, a community radio station out of Valparaiso, Indiana. Thanks for listening, and let's continue.
All right, we're back from station identification break, and now we're at a really good point of the story arc here. And what I want to say is, all right, you made the decision to do this, you got the feelings, and in some cases, you've had the come to your maker or come to your deity moment. How are you going to get there if you don't have the money, or you weren't born rich, or born with, having a year of savings on the side? So you've had the real conversation on okay, you might have to take a part-time gig, or maybe you're gonna have a spouse that can help you support, or you got to go move back home with family while you build up savings to move. That decision has been made. That person has gone to Nils, and they say, Nils, help me. What's next?
I was like, I would say, let's go create some magic. But so no, in seriousness though, I think the first step really is clarity of vision, right? And with this, with clients, I really slow that down. Because when I talk about a vision, right, our career or business is just one part of it. I'd also look at, okay, what does your financial situation look like? If you had a magic wand, what would your relationships look like? What would your health look like? So we really slow that down so that it's crystal clear, right? And it's not a vision that you think you should want, right? It's really your vision, and I think that's really important. And I really challenge the people I work with on that, because I get a feeling of who they are, and then I can see some of the things, and honestly, I just call BS. It's like, I don't believe that. I do not
Really?
believe that. And so, yeah, really, and I really challenge them, because sometimes it's very bland. It's like, yeah, I would like that. And I'm like, okay, I mean, are you willing to get up every day? Are you maybe willing to, move back to your parents to create this? If it's a no, there's not enough commitment. So that's not what you want. So we really do the work on that, and it can take sometimes quite a while to get that right.
One of my notes, one of
Mm,
the notes I had in there was my notes while I was scratching that down. I called the Socratic method.
mm,
And for those who don't know what the Socratic method is, it's a line of questioning that Socrates would use. And he stated that you already have the answers, and it's my job as Socrates to pull that out.
mm.
So Nils, you might be interrogating somebody, you know what you want, but I'm going to ask better questions.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really about getting to the core of it, to the bottom, because and again, radical honesty is linked to that, right? Because if you want to really create something, and like I said earlier as well, that there's a cost to pay, right? There's a price to pay, effort, money, difficult conversation, whatever it might be. But if you're not fully committed, if you don't believe it's possible, if you can't see it, smell it, feel it, then you're not going to work towards it. In my opinion, it's that simple. And so that's the first step, right? Because if you don't know where you're going, well, then how do you know what steps to take?
So what's a bad example of somebody's vision? Like somebody said, I just want to make more money. Would that be like a bad vision?
Not necessarily, because and I think this is also really important, because I think I call it I call it a vision anchored in return on life, rather than just focused on return on investment. What I mean with that is, it's a life that you want. And so for some people, they want to have the big house, the mansion, lots of money. That's okay, because what you want will be different to what someone else's wants. But the important thing for me is, okay, why is it that you actually want this? Like the real why, not just, yeah, because, you know, I think it'd be cool. No, like what's the real reason behind it? You know, maybe it's because you actually really want a sense of security, and you want to, you know, feel worthy, and this is something that will help you get there. Right. So I don't necessarily judge, but I do kick the tires. I really kick the tires, because
Well,
if I
you
don't do
should.
that, yeah.
So, all right, someone's built a vision. So let's pretend my vision is to have, oh, wait, this is Cynthia and I have this running, running conversation slash joke slash, not a degree of serious. So if somebody said,
Mm,
look, we want a place in, our vision is, we're in the United States, but we want a place in Cornwall because Cynthia's
mm,
favorite TV show is Doc Martin, and they film it in a province called Cornwall. For those who don't know where Cornwall is, it's like in the southwest of England. It's the idyllic countryside
It's beautiful. Yeah.
and all that.
mm.
So if somebody said there's a vision, what do you do
Mm.
to interrogate somebody against that?
Well, I mean, I guess, I mean, initially, I mean, we assume that has been, like, we've confirmed that this is their vision. Is the question of what are we going to do after that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So again, also, first of all, Cornwall is absolutely stunning. If anyone that hasn't been, it doesn't look like you're in the UK. You think it's somewhere completely different. But so this is when it starts to become interesting, right? Because then I think we start looking at, you know, the systems of how can we now create this, right? So it's breaking down the vision as well around, okay, what would get me there, right? What are the typical milestones? You know, what are the steps to really create this? And that's the practicality of it. So again, we look at creating an actual plan.
Mhm.
But part of the system, what I would say is one of the biggest things I focus on is the internal world, right? Because, you know, we can create a stellar plan, right? But if you are constantly getting in your own way by, you know, giving up at the first hurdle, or if something doesn't go your way, you know, you're berating yourself as like, oh, I should know this better, or I'm not good enough to get this.
Or
So we also really
procrastination.
look,
That's a big one, I would think, too. Procrastination.
yeah, yeah, that's a really big one. And that's an interesting one because it's something that you note, right? Because we can all make a sensible plan. We can
Mm-hmm.
also, and we can be quite sure that these are the right steps, right? Especially with the internet now, you know, there's so much information available. So it's never an issue of, you know, how to do something, because that's almost a Google, or maybe now it's ask ChatGPT kind of question. But the fear, right? Because procrastination is usually rooted in fear, like, oh, you know, I'm fearful of taking the action, or I'm fearful of doing this, or what if I fail? And this is the juicy stuff, at least in my opinion. This is where the real work is. Because when you start changing, you know, who you're being, the rest will flow from that.
Mm-hmm.
I think I can't remember who quote it was. I think it was Carnegie who said, you know, the success you achieve depends on, you know, the level of personal development you do, because the person you become will be, no, the person you will become will define the success that you'll get. And I truly believe that. I probably butchered that quote, so, you know, you will find it if you
But you
kind of
get
Google some of the
I
work that
get
this
the
person.
essence of what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah.
Dale Carnegie's work has just been fairly timeless. Random throw in there. One of my buddies posted, and he was excited about this. He posted on Facebook. He had a picture of a Dale Carnegie book from 19. I guess it looked
Mm,
like that the cover from a 1925 version. So it was kind of like this antique looking thing. But yeah, I mean that guy really had it, and it's building.
yeah.
His principles have been fairly timeless. It's
Mm-hmm.
fairly timeless in the self-help industry, especially.
Yeah, and you know what, actually, you know, Marco, the more I read because I read quite a lot of this, and you know, across the board, and I think all of these things, and I would even, they say the same thing. They literally say the same thing. It's, you know, get clear on what you want, and then, you know, do the internal work, essentially. You know, because if you don't do that, you will constantly self-sabotage.
Let's talk about
And I've
that.
seen this over and over. Yeah.
Let's talk about that, because that has been a recurring theme in our shows, and just some other
Mm,
conferences or even some networking events that get off the covers and you're not pitching each other. It's about, you know, overcoming the internal, I call it the soft skills, or some call it just getting your mental health together. I think that's been a big theme, more than I expected when I started the show. I thought I'd take a more of a technical route against it, like, oh, here's
mm,
how you do ChatGPT. Here's how you know, install Microsoft. I mean, we would do it over the radio, but installing Microsoft Office is going to solve your problems. Well, not really.
mm. Yeah.
We all know that.
So let's talk about like putting those systems together. And one of the notes we had was, a couple of notes we had around that was building authenticity as well as love
Mm.
versus fear. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I mean, how-tos are really useful as well, though, Mark. You know, don't want to discount that. But yeah, I think, you know, authenticity is super important. You know, because yes, I do work with founders, you know, people that want to take the transitions, or early stage founders, but I think at the core, we are still humans, right? That's who we are, and at the core, there's always an element of wanting to be connected, really wanting to be yourself. And I see so many people having fear of being themselves, fear of being truly authentic. Because, you know, what would people think if I really say what I like, right? If I really show up as myself. And this is a recurring theme, massively. And I would say it's interesting though, because there's not, honestly, it's not a kind of one shot and it's done. It's a continuous process. You know, it's like a mountain without a top. And a big part of that is, you said rightly, like the love versus fear. I mean, it's a beautiful distinction, because, you know, so often our actions are rooted in fear, right? And that leads to us comparing to others. That leads to us judging ourselves. That leads to us rushing, because, you know, I need to have the best new thing, you know, because otherwise I'm not good enough. And I think when we start choosing from love, you know, we ask ourselves, what would love do, or who would love be? All of a sudden, it becomes clear. Like, yeah, I would maybe set that boundary and tell someone that actually this is not okay for me. Or I would maybe, you know, actually go randomly to, you know, a dance class because I want to try it, you know. But it's a constant choice. It's a constant choice. So it's not always easy, because it can be difficult to come from a space of love, because we're so used to fear. We're so used to scarcity. We're so used to judging ourselves and others. But that choice is available. And the more you do that, and I've seen this with a client recently, because it's something we work on a lot. And this is a consultant in kind of diversity inclusion space. It's awesome. I love working with her. And so what was the difference? Like, when you started really choosing from that space of love. And it was this true alignment. There's this true alignment of how the business is operating with who that person wants to be and the life they want to create. And when you really choose from that space, that's what happens. Because when you choose from fear, there's hesitation, right? It's like, oh, should I really do that? Or maybe that's not an ideal client, but, you know, brings in
I
some
need the
money,
money.
so I'll just accept them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And I've seen this over and over. Sorry about that, Mark. I've seen it over and over when they choose love, and I've seen people let go of clients It's like, no, actually, it's really not right. And what happens? Miraculously, another client comes up that's way more aligned, or an opportunity comes up that's way more aligned with who they are. And I think that there's a tandem there. Like the authenticity comes from choosing love, because being authentic and being you is one of the most loving things you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Nils, that is quite true, and I've got 2 case studies for this. One of them is a client, somebody, a prospective client for our CRM work, and he said, "Hey, I want this designed. Here's my worksheet." He planned it out. I said, "Look, let's just," and I quoted a job for $700, and I said, "This is what it takes. If you want it to be really good and the authenticity, and you want this to reflect a long-term investment in your business, $700." Client says, "Well, there's somebody in St. Louis that can do it for 500. I can use $500. It's not as nice as 700, but I put the my colleague and I put the boundary up and said, go get it. We're still here. We're still in business. I've let go of another client. They were just moaning about, oh, it didn't do, it's not doing what I want." I said, "Okay, well, let's do X, Y, and Z. We'll be your project manager to switch the software over and then help you roll it out." And he said, "I don't have the money." I said, "Okay, go somewhere else. I mean, just leave. It's okay." I think, Mike, love could be an interesting phrase. And Mike, what do you think of playing with that as a love for yourself, or a self-care, or an admiration for yourself, and being able to set that boundary without fear of the world collapsing? I think that's where, if we can pull that off, I think we're all in better shape.
And just so you know, he doesn't talk that bluntly to his client.
Yeah, this is, I'm talking.
I mean, he really is much more nice and professional when he's basically saying, then go to the $500 vendor, because we can't do it for that amount. But yeah, no, I've heard him. I just want that to be, because otherwise you could be saying, well, you're a little negative there, Mark. Maybe you need to come from a source of love more, So
not too much of a curmudgeon.
But I think for Mark, and I've seen this over the years, he's learned to set boundaries so that he does have clients that understand what it takes for him to do his job, to provide them the best product, and aren't looking for the cheapest solution, which ends up breaking anyway. So that's a good point.
Yeah, and I love that example, because I mean, in that, for me, it's also taking I hear you also taking a stand for that other person.
Yes.
Because you're giving them the choice, but it's also, that this will really serve them, and you just set it up right. And if they're not ready, fine, right? But that's not on you. You can just love them and give them opportunity to work with you and work in a certain way. And I love that example. Thank you for sharing, Mark.
Oh, no worries at all. I mean, I feel, as they say in the UK, chuffed for, chuffed is like proud of oneself in American English, for taking the stand. I mean, yeah, it was $200, but, I've been doing it for, I've an expertise in that realm for, almost 30, at least 25 years. And if you don't like it, that's okay.
Yeah,
that's okay.
I think that's beautiful. That's like a good statement. It's like, that's okay. That's okay. It's amazing.
And I put and this is not trying to be a brag, but I hope my audience can relate to this. If you're putting those systems together of your family supporting you, and putting some, financial literacy to keep some decent money in the bank if you can, you'll survive and get through it. Because I've been on both sides of that fence. I've been at a point of scarcity where I had to take on everybody, and no matter the cost to myself. So, and Nils has seen it, and hopefully you in the audience can get inspiration from Nils, Cynthia, and I on that.
Yeah. And Mark, on that though, I think it's important to note, because I think that, I mean, it's sometimes easier to do this when you already have an established business, right? It's like, it's easy.
Yeah, that might be a little. Yeah, talk about
Yeah,
Yeah,
that.
you're not the best. You're not the best example, Mark. Come on.
So
So
let's not make an example out of me. I think there you
yes,
go.
no,
exactly.
There's another
I
thing.
think it's a great example. I think it's a great example, actually, because you've been on the other side, and I've been there as well. Like in the beginning, yeah, I might have served people where I'm like, "Ooh, yeah, probably was not ideal." And I think that's coming back to being realistic as well. Sometimes in the beginning, you just need to do the hard work, and you might need to, do a few, kind of training wheel projects that it maybe are not your ideal projects.
That
But
I
I think it's really,
yeah,
yeah.
agreed. Yeah, agreed. And I'll clarify my statement and backpedal a little bit and then front pedal. This was not a training wheels project. This is something I'm real, the project where I said no, because I'm really good at it. We're efficient. We got 25 years under our belt. We can do it. We deliver a quality product. But yeah, if it was like a training wheels project into my vision, like, hey, if this helps us take the company to the next level, yeah, I'll definitely take some training wheels time, or I'm gonna have to pay either in time or hire some consultants to help me along the way. But if it gets in my vision, yeah, I'll take a beating, for it. So it kind of segues into something actually. Cynthia, in the pre-production meeting, much to my surprise, NFL legend Herman Edwards, he was a coach of Indianapolis Colts. He was a linebacker or strong safety in the 70s for the Jets. And Cynthia came out and quoted Herman Edwards to the following phrase. Cynthia, I'll let you go from there. And it talks about intent versus commitment.
A goal without steps is just a wish. And I can relate to that because when I succeeded, when I was really determined to get my degrees in voice music, I had steps. I was really focused. I kept those steps going. I kept reanalyzing my steps. I talked to people who were in the field to give me advice. And the minute you start slacking on that, at least in my experience, it's like, oh, I've done that. I know how to do this now. I noticed that I wasn't getting the results as much as I would have liked. So, once you have those steps and they're really helping you to move forward to that next goal, don't give up on those steps or that habit of making steps because, that's the only way you're going to accomplish it. It's not going to just fall in your lap. It never does. So I was watching a documentary on NFL players and those who had the goal of becoming a professional football player. They achieved that goal, but they had no idea what was going to happen after that career. And they didn't know how to handle their money either. And so they ended up with a lot of nothing after their career was over and how to pull back from that and have a good life. So that quote really stayed with me concerning intent versus commitment.
So, Nils, we got a couple minutes left. And how can we summarize in a couple minutes balancing faith? Because there's faith in all this too. Faith, here's a nice deep question. Faith versus vision versus systems. Solve that in 2 minutes.
I love that. Right, cool. Let's see. You get vision first, get clarity on what you want. I think there's an element of faith where you can feel that it is right. And then I would say the systems is kind of the glue that brings it all together. Right. And it's also having faith in those systems, right? It's a little bit what Cynthia was saying, having faith that those steps will bring you there and reiterating. And I think a really important point that I would say with the systems, it's not just the plan, right? It's not just the plan, the calendars, the time blocking, they're all really good, but it's also about how are you speaking about yourself? How are you speaking about your vision? Are you judging yourself? Right? Because who you are being, I think, is so important. It's the core system, right? Because if you're being someone that it's inauthentic, I mean, let's say for me, for my example, if I'm being someone that's inauthentic and is not doing any personal work, personal growth work, chances are that I will not attract clients because I'm not walking the talk, right? So that's how I see them all come together. Faith in yourself, faith in your vision, faith in your systems, and keep on committing to that. How was that for 2 minutes?
That's
God.
very good. I'm very impressed. I love that. Well, we're reaching the end of the hour, and I'd like to thank my husband for keeping us on the level somewhat and on time today somewhat.
Somewhat.
And I'd also like to thank Niels. It's been great getting to know you and hearing your philosophy and your business acumen on being a coach. And it's been a real joy. It's helped give me some insight as well. If you missed some of the show today, you can listen to the replay on Thursday at 1 p.m. Central Time on WVLP 103.1 FM or live stream at www.vlp.org. And we store the past shows on Mark's website at www.mondocrm.com/podcast, or you can listen to the podcast on your favorite app at any time. We're listed in the major podcast applications. Just search for Mark Mondo and the show will come up, and you can subscribe to the show for the latest updates. And now the show is on YouTube. Just search for Mondo CRM or Getting Down to Business with Mark Mondo, and the episodes will come up on the YouTube feed. Thank you very much for spending time with us today, and we look forward to you joining us again next week.